SDPI and DSP as well. So my name is Ubaid Rahman, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. So first of all, thank you so much everyone for joining us, especially distinguished speakers, including Dr. Purat Duren, founding director of IDSP. Mr. Saeed Saprasa will be joining us shortly. He's the chief executive officer of Balochistan Board of Investment and Trade. Thank you, Mr. Shaukat Saab, for joining us. He's the regional program expert for Alliance for Rural Electrification. We'll shortly be, we have also been joined by Nafis Ahmed Saab, who's from Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, Basit Ghori. He's the manager research and networks at Renewables First, Ms. Amna Shahab from Policy Research Institute of Equitable Development, and last but not the least, Wes from IDSP. Thank you so much. I think we've also been joined by Saeed Safra Saab. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. So I'll be introducing all of the speakers in detail later, but as we go into discussion. But so before going into discussion, let me set some of the housekeeping rules for today's webinar. Along with the Zoom, this event is being live streamed on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. The speakers are encouraged to switch on their cameras, especially when they're speaking, as long as the network allows them to do so without any disruptions. And the webinar is also being recorded, and the video will be posted online, and you'll feel free to revisit the discussion later, and you can also share it within your networks as well. And we really invite questions from our audience and colleagues at the end or as the session goes on. So you can feel free to write them in the chat box or even in the Q&A box on the right side. And if you want to sort of speak, you can also click on the raise hand tab on the right side of the chat window as well. Now, I mean, coming to the topic before I invite Dr. Kurat for her intervention. So, I mean, the development of microgrids in Balochistan. I mean, if you look at the concept of this, there are three perspectives at hand. One is that we fully understand that the renewable energy potential of Balochistan is, is very extremely high, perhaps most high in all of the provinces of Pakistan, and it has excellent solar energy resources, vast areas of unused land, and also it has one of the highest wind potential as well, especially if we talk about the regions near Shaki as well. So I think colleagues from the IDSP will brief us in detail on this as well. Secondly, we again talk about the renewable energy. Another thing that we need to understand, and this is where I also believe that Basit as well as the colleagues from ARE can also sort of highlight, is that the acceptance of renewable energy in Balochistan is there. I mean, I'm generally talking about solar standalone system. That is something that is not new to the people in many areas. But in this perspective, today's discussion will be more towards the mini and microgrids, because again, solar standalone systems have significant advantages, and the locals have come up with some very strong solutions. But when we're talking about these microgrids, we're talking about solutions that have even increased reliability, some more flexibility, and they can also be sort of scaled up. They can lead to actually better economic and operational efficiency, better quality of service, and even more likely to sort of empower the community. So in very short, these systems can provide some very better service delivery as well. So I think we'll be hearing from all of these esteemed speakers in detail about the socioeconomic potential and advantages that we do have from these systems. But the last and the most important point that we actually need to discuss this is, how do we actually get this all together? I mean, this is most important. The potential is there. We know the opportunities are there, but how do you bring those necessary conditions and that environment where this can all happen together? Especially, how do we address the financing challenge? Who are some of the key partners that can be sensitized for this? And this needs to be perhaps one of the very key messages that we can aim from this webinar. So some strong messages that we can actually send to different stakeholders. So I believe we do have the right set of stakeholders with us, but firstly, let me invite Dr. Kurat Duren, the founding director of IDSP, for her welcome remarks. Dr. Kurat is had made some significant contribution to the communities in Pakistan and how to create that meaningful change. I mean, I fully understand that no one here needs a really introduction. We all know Dr. Kurat. She has been vast experience in community organizations and development as well. And again, don't really have the words. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. We're extremely honored to have you here with us. So without any further ado, let me hand it over to you for your initial interventions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ubaid Saab. My most respectable, honorable panelist today in this webinar. I'm really grateful that some very serious-minded people have got together today on this great opportunity, which is being unfortunately being missed out by so much of what I would say, not really focusing on it provincially and nationally, especially from Islamabad and some also as well as Balochistan. That what Balochistan is really inherited, I mean, blessed with by the nature. It can, if only it could be really taken like the same way the asset as we are taking what is underground Balochistan, underground the land of Balochistan. If only this could also be taken as the same with the same value. I'm sure this issue of energy can be solved not only in Balochistan, but Balochistan can solve it and effect nationally to the whole country. If only this can be seen from a very workable perspective, rather than going into circles of discussions of in academic debates, political debates, administrative issues that this whole concept is trapped in at both level, Islamabad and Balochistan. But I'm so glad and thankful to this panel today, who has taken out time to focus on something on that IDSP's young research team initiated in its first phase of the renewable energy project. And the credit goes to the team that today I'm talking on this based on this report. The report is out, and I'm sure most of us has shared it. Now, the second part of the second phase of this project is being initiated, and it's very heartening that microgrid concept is being introduced, and that is the way to go in Balochistan. Centralization will never work. It is not working in any other area also. It will never work in this area as well. It is not working in health system. It is not working in education system. It's not working in the floods and everything that today we are affected by. It's centralization. How can it work with such a large landscape, with inaccessible areas of the terrain? We have to be really very realistic when we talk about Balochistan and its resources and the people, and especially the energy. But the nature has blessed it with I think solar energy that can go around the air, throughout the air, for everywhere. I would say that this microgrid is the way to go. There's a concept note which is shared by everybody. I won't repeat it and go in details of it. The facts and figures, it's in front of all of us. But as Ubaid has said, what is the way forward? How do we go about it? We have to use the fundamental techniques of community mobilization or the beneficiaries who are going to be benefited. Mobilization of the beneficiaries. Their a systematic detail orientation and really education in it. It will take time. The baseline will take time. If we invest time in educating and organizing the beneficiaries, the stakeholders in the communities in the initial period, we can really launch a great program of microgrids. And that's they will be taken care by the people themselves. It will be managed by themselves, and it will be maintained by them. And it will also, if they are getting benefits from it, they will definitely pay it also. Believe me, it's the rich and powerful who don't pay their dues, not the poor people, not the ones who are really reliable on the little bit that they get. They want to pay for it. But there should be something what they're paying for. Is it working? Is it halfway working? Is it there? Is it in their control? Do they understand what is being installed there? Are they being part of it? Are they part of the decision making? What is happening in their communities, or in their district, or in their union council, or wherever we are going to place, we are going to engage with. So these are the key questions, Ubaid and my friends here in today's webinar, that we need to focus on and come up with a joint strategy. It can be a beautiful action research project on energy, which SPDI and our friends jointly in IDSP can be proud of when it comes out, because it's going to be a very unique journey, a very impactful and unique journey, because it is supported by nature, it is supported by what's on the ground. It is not being manufactured artificially to please any donor, or to please any party, or to please any regime. Everything is so automatic, so organic, and so real, and really grounded. If we miss this chance, if we miss this opportunity, what other opportunity is going to come? What is there any other way? There is no any other way. This is the way to go. And for Balochistan, it is the only way to, because of its terrain, its landscapes, and the isolations of its communities, social structure. That's the way it is. And the majority population of Balochistan is quite self-sufficient, sufficient in their thinking, in their philosophy towards life, as a tribal setup. They work out their own solutions. And whatever solutions they get, if they're good, workable, they maintain it, they own it as their own things. Because people here are mentally, in a way, still freedom in their minds. They can do things for their own self, for their community, and they believe it, and they maintain it. So this is very much aligned with their way of thinking of the people here also. And this is the way to go. Once the concept is workable, it's powerful, and it's doable, and it is accepted by the stakeholders, especially the communities. Especially the communities. The money will come. The money comes. Believe me, we all know, you all have been in the business of development very effectively and very successfully and impactfully. We all know that money comes. But what is it that we are offering? What is the program? What is the strategy? That's what I think I'm following Ubaid's line from. Thank you so much. And excuse me if I've taken too much time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gurat, for setting such a wonderful scene, and also sort of being so candid. And I think you're very right in the context that any development that needs to happen, Balochistan needs to have the people at the heart, needs to have people at the center. And that's actually really important. I think this is where also renewable energy, I mean, again, has so, among other advantages, one of the very key advantages of renewables is that it is sort of decentralized in nature. You can always go for these decentralized, standalone system. You can go for these different mini and microgrids. And this is where I believe some very strong research and coming in from organizations such as IDSP is going to add a lot of the value, especially research coming from based upon some of the local content. So with this, I'll be actually initially we'll be starting with the technical presentation on the study that IDSP has sort of conducted, and how they see whole scenario being working in Balochistan since a long time. How do they see the potential of microgrids in Pakistan? There have been some of the studies conducted, and you have been working very closely with the government. So let me invite Mr. Mohammed Awais, the Senior Research Associate at IDSP. So if I can also request our MIS team to please kindly allow Awais to share his screen. And yes, with this, it's over to you, Awais. Yeah. In the meanwhile, while they're sort of allowing it, you can sort of.
Please. मैं इसका बंद कर दिया.
Thank you so much, Ubaid Saab, for the welcoming remarks, and hello everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm going to share my presentation with you. So starting with my presentation,
Unless if you can sort of share this slide share option. I mean, it is shared if you can turn on the screen display. Yeah. You turn on slide share from the right corner. Yeah, exactly. Slideshow. Yes.
Yeah, mine is still on zero.
नीचे स्लाइड शेयर के ऊपर आप क्लिक करें तो इट विल sort of go in the wider mode. जी जी.
now it's visible. Where's up?
Go to the slideshow and then click on, start
Yes,
together.
it is visible now. It is visible now.
So thank you so much, everyone. We will be starting from the presentation, which will focus on the potential of the microgrids in Balochistan. So here is some of the outlines of the presentation, in which we will cover the electricity snapshot of Balochistan, electrified villages, and solar and environment protection in Balochistan, unique geographic characteristics, off-grid and mini-grid potential, research and evaluation, distribution energy solution, and about what is microgrid, how it will be useful in the villages of the Balochistan, landscape of microgrid in Pakistan, tariff settlement, recommendation and suggestion. So we'll be starting from the introduction of IDSP. So what is IDSP? Institute for Development Studies and Practices, which has a vast experience of 24 years of experience in the pioneer renewable energy. So they are pioneer in the renewable energy from the past 2 years, and it's a leading organization in the Balochistan, which is specifically working on the renewable energy. And also we are also working on the renewable energy policy for Balochistan, and we have published and report previous year, which will cover all holistically about the Balochistan, that what is the potential of renewables in the Balochistan, and what are the key barriers and challenges which deploy the renewable energy in Balochistan. So the main mission and mission is our IDSP has that we have to integrate renewable energy in Balochistan and facilitate our other organizations like government and industries and academia and link them together. So why we are shifting from the old centralized system to the decentralized system? So as we see, the landscape is changing day by day, and the price of the renewable is also very low nowadays, and the demand is increasing among the consumer. But there is still a fluctuation regarding the increased rise of the tariff and electricity bills among the consumer that every day the bills are increasing day by day, and we have to shift from the centralized system to the decentralized system, because as we see that in 2022 the natural disaster occurs and flood, due to which we have the shortfall and blackout in our national grid. So we have to shift from the centralized grid to the decentralized grid. So think we have, yeah. Electricity snapshot of Balochistan. Balochistan faces severe energy challenges, like 64% of the population lack of electricity, and 88% of the population have no modern energy sources. Like the outdated system is there, and inefficient transmission lines, because as Nefra said that 11 kV feeder can only be transmitted 20 to 25 kilometers, but in Balochistan, as we see, the transmission lines of 11 kVA is exceeded above 150 kilometers. So there is a lot of transmission lines issues in Balochistan and frequent load shedding issues. And as we see that our current demand is 1950 megawatt, but we are only receiving 600 to 800 megawatt per day. Unelectrified areas of Balochistan. So in this graph, as you see that the highlighted areas of the Balochistan has no electricity, and there is lack of electricity in these areas compared to the other province, that the highlighted one. As we see in this slide, so we have a lot of solar and wind potential in Balochistan, because Balochistan has highly attractive solar and wind sites with significant potential, but many lack grid connection, because where the potential is there and there is no population, so we cannot uh, 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 provide electricity to that area. This location could be developed into gigawatt scale parks, and we can integrate it into the national grid. Unique geographic characteristic. So Balochistan has a unique geographic characteristics, vast areas, scattered population, and remote areas with high renewable energy potential, but no grid access, make renewable energy deployment difficult. Though the low population density and outdated technology further complicate grid extension, make it economically unfeasible, especially for the villages and long transmission lines, lead to high technical losses, reducing efficiency and increased cost in case where load center exceed 500 meters. So microgrid has the best potential in those areas. So in this graph, where you see the highlighted and dark sides, so these are the number of unelectrified villages in the overall Pakistan. So the highlighted areas in this graph shows us that there are number of high villages, but no electricity is provided to those areas. So has IDSP, our objective that we are working in this year, because we have to do two feasibility studies for the two specific sites, one with the solar and one with the hybrid, which is solar and wind. So two feasibility studies have to be done this year, and we have selected four of these sites which has the high potential of the microgrid, which varies from 50 to 150 or 200 households. The areas are located in Kila Abdullah, Jalmaxi, Sipi, and Avaran. So these areas support highly for the microgrid sites. So what is national grid system? So the national grid system is a centralized system with a high voltage transmission using which generates from the local coal, hydro, and nuclear power plants. It involves high setup cost and cover large geographic areas. On the other hand, as we see the mini grid, so mini grid is a decentralized system using renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydro. It varies from the local region system with a minimal environmental impact. And the third one is a DC home system, which will provide electricity on a small scale, like a DC home system, which will run DC lights and DC fans. So what is microgrid? The concept of microgrid, which are independent decentralized electricity network capable of financing separately from the national grid. In this diagram, visually break down the operation aspect of the microgrids, like the generation, distribution, and end consumer. All three are done in the specific one area, highlighting their autonomy and potential to enhance energy resilience, particularly in the region where the national grid is either unreliable or non-existent. The flow from the center concept to the supporting element underscore how microgrid integrate renewable energy sources and advanced technologies to provide stable and sustainable energy solutions, in which we can integrate hydro, solar, wind. These technologies can be used in the microgrid. So why microgrid is used in the villages, campuses, and other areas? So it will directly improve the rural livelihood, enhance the economic activities like businesses, value creation to local products and services, and growth of local businesses. So here are the types of microgrids that best of operation. As we talk about the best of operation, so we have off-grid isolated island mode in which the national grid is not connected, and one is grid connected in which we have the net metering solutions, so we can sell the excess amount of produced generation to the national grid, and one is network, so coupled with the number of microgrids in that area. And based on topology, so we have AC microgrid, DC microgrid, and hybrid. So DC microgrid can also be used in areas where DC potential is there or small systems are there. And when we talk about the power level, so we have nano pico, which is less than 1 kilowatt, and microgrid, which is 1 to 10 kilowatt. And on the other hand, mini grid are above 10 kilowatt, okay, 10 kilowatt. So based on operation, so where we can use these microgrids, so they can be used in the military microgrids, campus microgrids, community microgrids. So military, they want stable electricity for 24 hours. So on the when there is a shortfall or blackout, so military need their own decentralized system.
Res, just a request, if perhaps we can actually move towards the key points that you're sort of trying to make. Just in interest of time, we can sort of skip the basics of the microgrids, perhaps.
Yeah. Right. So why microgrids are useful for scattered and unelectrified villages? Accessibility in the remote areas where grid connections are not available. Cost effectiveness, because long transmission lines from the national grid to provide electricity to those to that village is not financially viable. So we have to install microgrids in that area. Flexibility and scalability that we have to provide these points cover that we can show the demand of the consumers in that village. So on that area, we can install like 1 to 2 megawatt system on their demand. Environmental benefit that it support renewable energy sources, so reduce they can automatically reduce carbon emissions, and economical benefits like it can benefit the school, businesses in that area, health facilities, improve quality of life. Like they can use modern technologies like refrigeration and AC and other equipments. So landscape for microgrid in Pakistan, as we talk about the silent features of the NEPRA. So NEPRA microgrid regulation focus on several key areas. Firstly, they aim to electrify unserved region, bringing power to areas currently without access. The regulation set a capacity limit of up to 5 megawatt for individual microgrid, ensuring they are both effective and manageable. They also establish reasonable tariff for the consumer to keep electricity affordable. Additionally, the regulation maintains strong technical standard to ensure microgrid operate safely and efficiently. So factors supporting microgrid adaptation, what are the factors? So microgrid adaptation is supporting by several key factors. Firstly, microgrid are increasingly favored for their ability to provide reliable power to remote underserved areas, and we have to strengthen the ARE policy to achieve the 30% of the renewable by 2030 by improving our renewable energy deployment in those areas, and from shifting from the local indigenous resources to the renewable energy. Additionally, involving the private sector is crucial for scaling up microgrid projects in Balochistan, as a private investment and expertise can accelerate development, improve efficiency, and introduce innovation solution. And what are the challenges that challenging? The first challenging is to for the securing financing for the microgrid developers. and we have the investors and other entities have the limited experience in the microgrid or among the businesses or microgrid projects are in the high risk because of their investments and inefficient financing capacity of local developers to meet equity requirement. So tariff settlement. So aim to consider during the tariff settlement is to attract commercial entities to invest in microgrids, ensuring financial viability and sustainability, boosting the economy and improving people's quality of life, balancing sustainability and affordability. So there are four main challenges of the tariff that we see in the ground level: that consumer ability to pay, consumer willingness to pay, cover capital cost, which will cover all the cost of the microgrid in that area, and cover the operation and maintenance cost for the developers. So here are some of the recommendation and suggestions for the microgrid. So microgrid can enhance community involvement because we have to involve community in this process, because community plays a vital role in the microgrid deployment. Implement robust community engagement strategy to ensure local feedback shapes microgrid projects, foster inclusivity and support. Involve financing solution. Develop tailored financing model to address the unique need of microgrid projects, such as private partner investment and impact investment. Or in last, we have to strengthen our stakeholder engagement like the academia, industry, and our government and other entities to and like the effective R&D for the microgrid development to build a strong connection between all these stakeholders to work togetherly on this area. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Avais, for setting a very good scene about briefing what the microgrids are, some of their rules. If you can stop the screen share, yeah, just in a meanwhile. So you have set a very good scene so we can go ahead with the panel discussion and sort of also respond to some of the very key questions that we have, like how do we enable those public-private partnerships to sort of come in? What should be the role, specific role of different stakeholders? And we'll also be sort of looking on what are some of the good business models that we have, perhaps even locally, taking examples from the likes of Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, PAPAF, who has actually done some very good work around those, as well as also we do have Shaukat Saab as well, who has done a lot of work around and can also sort of shed light on the regional programs and what has been worked in the in South Asia as well. But just before going to these practices, let me just initially come requested esteemed individuals, Said Sarpara Sahab, the Chief Executive Officer of Balochistan Board of Investment and Trade. Sir, will also be requesting you to later shed light on what different panelists have sort of also highlighted and sort of respond to some of the options and solutions they have pushed forward. But initially, if I can sort of request you to sort of briefly highlight how do you envision or how what initially, so if you have some of the expectations from this webinar, what sort of solutions are you looking for? But at the same time, very importantly, how does Balochistan Board of Investment and Trade view the role of these public-private partnerships in promoting the deployment of microgrids in Balochistan, and if there are any particular challenges or opportunities that you would also initially like to highlight at this point. We'll also be coming back later, but just starting the whole panel from you. So thank you so much again, sir, for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Thank you, Zia Saab, Ubaid Rahman Saab, and Madam Kuratulan Bakhtiyari Saiba, and Abhay Saab for the wonderful presentation. I'm really grateful to the organizers, SDPI and IDSP, for organizing such a great event because it's need of the day as far as the Balochistan is concerned, and the problems of Balochistan and the investment in the investment portfolio. The pivotal point or the crucial area is the energy sector. And energy sector, as very well elaborated by the Awais Saab and Madam herself, and your good self as well, that Balochistan being a scattered population, we can't cater the energy needs of our people with the existing and the obsolete system. Reason being, we don't have the dispatch capacity. We are not, most of the areas are not connected with the national grid. Gwadar is yet to be connected with the national grid. Gwadar port is still waiting for the national grid to be connected. We are getting electricity from Iran, but that is an interim arrangement. So, meaning thereby, our all investment portfolio rotates around the energy availability, and which is unfortunately a crucial part, and we are missing that link. To be very specific, because there are other panelists, and I don't want to take much of the time because the esteemed members of well-qualified people are around, are present in today's webinar. For the public-private partnership, yes, that is the way out. That is the only solution where we can engage the private sector. The most important part, as what is the mandate of Balochistan Board of Investment and Trade? We are basically a matchmakers. We provide one window facilitation. We just market, pitch the projects, and we are matchmakers with the investors and the departments. Our mandate is only when there's an investor, we just connect them, we facilitate them to be connected with the concerned departments. Then the handholding is the prime responsibility of that department. We have the $6 billion proposals for energy sector with us. But we are lacking because of the national energy policy. There are different issues for the captive power. There are the regulations, the tariff issues, NEPRA, BPEPRA, PPPA, NAB, XYZ. I'm very categorically speaking because I'm always trying to be outspoken because these are the genuine issues. If somebody don't want to discuss it, it would be a professional dishonesty not to discuss these. So keeping in view that, then coming to your point, as far as the PPP framework is concerned, it's an ideal framework because there are many areas where the government at alone can't do that properly, can't provide the service delivery to each and every corner of Balochistan due to scattered population, the difficult terrain. There are other problems as well. Likewise, the private sector cannot do that as well. So what's the way out is the PPPA. In PPP, there's a viability gap fund. If there is a project of utmost importance for a public service delivery, and that is not possible with the government that can undertake itself alone, or a private sector itself alone, then comes the PPP framework, where suppose this is not viable for the both parties, then there is a VGF, viability gap fund, that can pull in, that can comes in, and that can make it viable for the private investor to just recover the loss and get it to cross that benchmark and make it profitable for itself. So PPP framework, we have a PPP authority and PPP unit. I would have recommended that the PPP unit and the PPP authority must have presented their case themselves because they would be in a better position to explain. But being a part of that, we are interface to the PPP. Whenever we receive a proposal, we have two options, whether either we send it to the government departments for the handholding, or we send it to the PPP authority that for the PPP framework. So there are the two options available with us. So this is what I had to say, and it's very important for the risk management. It's beautifully explained by Awais Saab and Madam. So I would request that the PPP framework has the best options. But having said that, there's a lengthy process. We can't conclude an immediate term, at least not even with the 6 months. So we have projects that has taken more than 6 months to a year to be concluded. So that process has to be shortened. Now, this is what I had to say. Thank you much.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for wonderful intervention, especially around the public-private partnerships. You all, I think, really collectively have to again sort of respond to that. This is one of the exactly very right strategies and mechanism that can be actually taken forward for particularly addressing the financing issue that we're talking about, and also addressing a lot of challenges that have been highlighted. So we'll be again requesting you a bit later to also sort of respond on some of the solutions that will be also proposed by some of our other panelists. Now let us sort of now hear from two of our subject experts that we have who worked around. FISAP has been working around with PAPAF is actually one of the organizations that has actually worked on these microgrid solutions in Pakistan. They have actually on hand experience, and also we do have Shaukat Sab. So firstly, perhaps going to a bit on South Asia side and then coming down to Pakistan. So first, again, let me come to thank you so much. Shaukat Sab has been joining us from Alliance for Electrification. So, Shaukat Sab, I mean, in your experience, what have been some of the strategies that have proven very effective in scaling up these microgrid projects across perhaps initially across South Asia while ensuring their long-term financial and operational sustainability? Because these are apparently from a West presentation as well as what has been highlighted. These are some of the two very key challenges that are there, and how can these be applied to the sort of the concept of Balochistan? Do we have any learnings of that? And secondly, also taking lead from what Dr. Kurat has also mentioned, how critical is the community ownership and involvement in the success of these microgrid projects in the rural areas? So with this, sir, coming to you, and then I'll be coming to Nafis Saab after this.
Okay, Beth, thank you very much, and I hope everybody can hear me. First of all, I would like to thank IDSP for giving us the presentation. One question that I wanted to ask, and they can reply to me whenever they like to, whether IDSP has conducted a study for this particular interventions in Balochistan, where they have got the data, or they have gathered the data from existing documents or studies with the government. Like I said, when I was at GAG, we have conducted some kind of assessment study for AEDB at the time, no PPIB, specifically for Balochistan when they wanted to electrify rural homes and villages through solar and wind. So this was one document which we did. The other document that I developed for AEDB for the government of Pakistan was basically to electrify or convert the 24,000 tubules, public sector tubules, onto solar. So these were the two documents that I personally was involved in. So just wanted to ask whether they have information from those studies and from other studies already available with the government and with the private sector, or they have conducted a separate study. So my name is Shaukat. I work for the Alliance for Rural Electrification, and I'm basically looking after the rural electrification sector in South Asia, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, India, and Sri Lanka right now. But I mean, in the future, we'll be moving to some other countries in the region as well. So yeah, Obaid, coming to your question, the global and regional situation varies from country to country. And when it comes to the infrastructure development, especially the power generation plants, then we also have to look the type of stakeholders that we are working with. The role of communities you mentioned, and Ms. Kuratalan mentioned, is very critical, and institutional capacities, which is also some of the bottlenecks or the issues we face in Balochistan. But I mean, nevertheless, the decentralized power generation and the microgrids, approach has been proven successfully globally for rural electrification, whereby we understand that energy is produced from indigenous resources of hydropower, solar, wind, or biomass, and that is then locally used without the need for long-distance, expensive transmission and distribution infrastructure. And according to estimates, that infrastructure, the conveyance, we lose about 25 to 30% electricity in transportation from thermal power plant in Sindh to Gujarat and Punjab or to Islamabad. I mean, we lose about 30% electricity on the way where that can be used. So this is, and then the infrastructure is very expensive, technically sometimes not feasible when we think about Balochistan. So, we know the population of Balochistan, like a representative from the government of Balochistan, I just mentioned, they're living off-grid in scattered settlements Even if there is a grid, there is no electricity in the grid. That means they're facing load shedding, no electricity during the day or the evening or whenever somebody is running a business. So the demand side is there in Balochistan. And like I said, I have developed 2 documents for the government. So I know for a reason the demand is there. And it's not a demand, it's a dire need of the people and the businesses and industrial sector in Balochistan. On the other side, when you look at Balochistan, the presentation also highlighted there is the World Bank assessment in Balochistan. There are so many other documents says that the highest potential for solar is basically in Balochistan. Then when I was working on the World Bank funded project, the wind potential is there in the coastal areas of Balochistan, also in Sindh. But when we are talking about Balochistan today, so the wind potential is there. In some areas, we can combine the two as in a hybrid kind of model, to meet the demand of the people. So the resources are there, the needs are there. This is a very good equation. What we need to do is basically, this needs the attention of the federal government as well as the provincial government. And in particular, the private sector investment. Everybody is saying IPPs and PPP model works very well. But I mean, for that, we need some sort of, a very good atmosphere in Balochistan. The law and order situation could be one challenge when we look at the some of the challenges. Finances, like mentioned, is the other challenge. Capacity, institutional capacity could be another one. And then we also know the population, like I said, lives in scattered community hamlets or villages who do not have the technical and management capacity. Ms. Kuratulan mentioned the role of communities, but I mean the role of communities means the communities have to take part in the planning of the project, which is very, very important. They should be there on board. And then the implementation stage, of course, they have to be there. They should steer the construction work. And the most important role for them that I see is basically the post-completion operation and maintenance of these smaller microgrid decentralized power generation units. Because the government structures, we know they are not there in the rural areas by and large. The entrepreneurs, the utility companies, they will not be going to these rural areas because they don't see any profit. So the only option left with us is basically the role of the community. And that role has to be strengthened. Like I said, they don't have the capacity. So the capacity building is very important. And whenever we plan or budgeting for a particular project, we have to allocate some sort of funds for the capacity building awareness of the community, so that we create that capacity within the community so that they can take part in the construction, like I said, in the planning, but also they can run these, no matter whether it's hydropower, solar, or wind, hydro, or wind solar hybrid system. I mean, the community, if they are going to run the system, they should have the capacity. So I hope this answers your question on the, scalability and some best practices. We have some best practices in Pakistan already available in the north of Pakistan. But I mean, there, the community capacities have been built, not by the government, by the private sector, Aga Khan Development Network, these RSPNs, Rural Support Program Networks, because the rural areas, like I said, the government has no structure. So the private sector is basically working with the communities, and for them to work with them, the most important part is basically to build their capacity so that they are capable of, have some sort of role in the implementation of the project, but also, like I said, the operation and maintenance. So the best practices we have in Pakistan, but that best practices, obviously, when we want to implement in Balochistan, we have to do some sort of capacity building measures initially, and then we can. So the models are here. I mean, this can be replicated, but for that we have to work some activities on the ground with the community. Coming to your second question, Ubaid, on the role of community, I have highlighted some role of the community during the planning, because the community is basically giving you the land for the construction of any infrastructure, but in particular the power plant. They also give you the water rights, because you are using the community water and diverting it from agriculture, like for instance, these hydropower sites. Then they give you the local material. So they're giving you so many things. So they are one of the main stakeholders in the project implementation. Plus, like I said, they have a very critical role in the operation and maintenance of the built facilities. So the rule is very important. And, you know, like I said, there are best practices. The best practices, I mean, where the community is basically in charge of the activities during the construction and the post-completion operation and maintenance. So the ownership of the community is also important. So they own the projects, assets, they own the infrastructure, but at the same time, they should have some sort of capacity to run the facilities. Obed, this is what I
Yes.
look at it.
Yes.
If there is any more question, I'll be happy to
Yes,
answer.
thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for your wonderful interventions and also sort of providing us those solutions and the key areas we need to sort of work on, fully understanding the point around the capacity building, bringing in all stakeholders, the role of the federal, and how this needs to be built in the discourse of the federal and the provincial government. So we'll do, let us also, again, now coming to Nafis Ahmed Saab, who's a subject expert at Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. Nafis Saab, there have been very few projects of microgrids in Pakistan, but PAF has been the one who has been dealing with these projects. So based upon your initiatives, what have been some of the learnings, and how do you see the way forward for Balochistan, particularly in specific as well? So thank you so much for joining us, Nafis Saab. Over to you.
Thank you, Ubed, and good afternoon to all colleagues, panelists, and other attendees. I would just like to give you a brief introduction of myself and my organization. I'm Nafis Ahmed Khan, and I'm heading Renewable Energy Unit at PPF. As you may know, PPF is one of the leading pro-poor organization, and we have a network of partner organizations. We have over 40 partner organizations, and that's our strength, that we have presence in nook and corner of Pakistan. Our mandate is poverty alleviation, and as you may know that we, myself and my team, we are addressing energy poverty through renewable energy. And I'm also glad to share that I have been involved right from the beginning for renewable energy sector in Pakistan. That was back in 2006 when I was heading UNDP wind energy project, and that was actually the beginning of this sector where UNDP assisted AEDP, Alternative Energy Development Board, to come up with the first renewable energy policy of Pakistan. And even, you know, when we talk of renewable energy, so resource assessment is a prerequisite. At that time, we were lacking data. So even AEDB, the government of Pakistan, they had to offer wind risk, meaning that there will be a certain benchmark, and in case there is no wind, so still they will offer, you know, investors a certain payment, you know. So sort of a very big incentive for renewable energy investors in Pakistan. And with the help of that, AEDB was successful in attracting billions of investment in renewable energy. That was just kickstart, you know. So I have been involved both for on-grid and off-grid. In PPF, I think since inception, we have successfully completed over 1,300 projects, renewable energy projects with cumulative capacity of 11.3 megawatt and benefiting around 65,000 households. So obviously, when we talk of off-grid, so this is a big number because as you know that when we talk of pico, micro and mini grids, their capacity usually range in kilowatts and, you know, up to, let's say, 100 kilowatt. So most recently, PPF, with the support from KFW, we have successfully completed 68 solar mini grids. And these were again located in off-grid, underserved, underdeveloped regions of Pakistan, including district Sawabi, Lucky Marwat, and Karak. Along with these solar mini grids, we also developed state-of-art microgrids, not microgrid, I would say mini grids in hydropower projects as well. As Shaukat mentioned, these are located in upper northern areas, including Chitral, Upper Dir, and District Buner. And these systems are, again, you know, PPF approach is community-centric, community-driven development. And as Shaukat emphasized on the role of community, so our approach is to involve community right from the conceptual stage till implementation, and then post implementation and operation and maintenance of the systems. So this has been a successful model, and our renewable energy delivery models have been recognized globally at international fora. You know, our model was awarded with the best prize in and by Energy Institute UK. That was in 2016. Again, 2018 by Alliance for Rural Electrification, where Shaukat is representing now ARE, Alliance for Rural Electrification, and back again most recently for the biggest energy workforce that we proudly claim by PPF, because as I mentioned that we have network of partners. So we were awarded for the biggest energy workforce for mini grids and microgrids, especially in off-grid sector. So we had a quite successful experience, and like we discussed and Shaukat mentioned as well, the role of community is a pivotal role, you know, because they had to, once these projects are completed, so they have to take over and then they have to operate and maintain these systems. And this has been quite a successful experience, because the projects we completed back in 2018-19 are still functional. And some of these projects were even inaugurated recently. So that itself is a testament that by having a proper design and operation and the governance system, community involvement, these systems are very viable and sustainable. So building on those, as our colleague from government of Balochistan mentioned, that there is a huge potential in Balochistan. And luckily, we can claim that Pakistan has more than 300 sunny days, you know, so vast solar resource. And again, in our south, we have wind corridor that was again identified by UNDP when I was working with them. So that itself has a capacity of 50,000 megawatt from wind. Again, in the north, we again claim that we have more than 50,000 megawatt of potential coming from hydropower. So we are resource blessed, you know, we need to, all we need to have is proper regulatory framework, especially when we talk of off-grid, we lack proper regulatory framework. The other challenges could be access to finance, you know, community involvement is already tested and proven, you know, experience. So I think if we invest properly and we take communities on board, so that could be a successful story, you know. IDSP is one of our partner organization, and let me inform you that in case of Balochistan, because we have scattered population with low population density, so there again we encouraged and we provided communities with solar home system. Like we have recently completed a project in underdeveloped and one of the most remote areas of Balochistan in Haran. The village name is Eriklag, where we electrified around 230 households. We provided them with solar water system. We also helped them in plantation, you know, and just to enable them for socio-economic development of their communities. So mini grid, I think, could be a costly option in case of Balochistan, because most recently we got to estimate that for 1 kilowatt, I think probably it will cost us around 18 million Pak rupees. So we have to explore and we have to see, unless and until we have productive usage of renewable energy, mini grid won't be viable, because the projects we discussed and the project we implemented were mostly funded by donors for the ultimate objective of poverty alleviation. So I think as we go along, we'll discuss, and if there are any particular questions, so I would like to respond.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nafisa, for highlighting the initiatives of Papa. Just before coming to Basit and Dr. Khalid for the financing part, and then I'll be coming to Amna. I just one very quick, if you can very briefly highlight that what exactly is the business model of the microgrids. I mean, you did mention at the end that they're being initially being funded by KfW, but during the operation stage, is there any business model or revenue sharing model or revenue generation model through which the community is also sort of financing these initiatives, or is it all being run through the, yeah?
Exactly. Thank you, Beth, for identifying the governance mechanism of our renewable energy system, especially for off-grid population. what we do, we develop a tariff mechanism based on consensus within the community, because later on they have to take over the systems. So they come up with the solution, we help them, we guide them. So like in case of solar mini grids in Soabi district, they have a line rent of, let's say, rupees 100 per month, which they collect, just to enable them that in case there is any breakdown, so these communities are capable, or they can have the option to replace, or not I would say replace, but just to maintain and repair those systems. And then there is a variable part, per unit cost. So that could be, even if this at this time we have a tariff of, I think, 7 rupees for solar mini grids, and you can compare it with urban areas where we still have long blackouts and long load sheddings, hours. But our communities are still independent, and they are operating these systems 24/7, because these systems are backed up with the lithium-ion batteries, state-of-art batteries, and they are enjoying it at a fraction of the cost what we are paying in our urban areas, even in Islamabad, like 60, 70 rupees, ranging to that high tariff. So that's the tariff collection and, the tariff mechanism. So these communities collect tariff, they agree with themselves, they are within themselves, and then they collect it and they pay the cost of the salaries of operators and other, job holders, just to ensure that systems are working properly. And same is the case for our hydro projects. Again, even for 2 of our projects, we have registered them as a utility, so that this governance mechanism or the business model is fully independent, and they don't have to ask for additional resources, so once they are handed over these systems, so they can operate and maintain. So they have dedicated technical as well as management teams, and they collect or recover their salaries from this power system. So very well designed and
Yes.
very well designed governance mechanism is already there, because without that won't be, I think that will be questionable that they can sustain.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nafisa. That's wonderfully highlighted. So I think now coming to Basit. Basit is working as the manager of research and networks at the Renewable Source, is also working very closely with IDSP around the RE policy of Balochistan and other initiatives as well. So Basit, what we're seeing is that we need to sort of explore these different financing mechanisms that can actually bridge the gap, because just like Nafis have highlighted, for 1 kilowatt, there is a huge investment of roughly around PKR 1.8 million. Definitely, there are some innovative business models that can sort of handle. But going beyond that, what are some of the financing opportunities that can sort of be tapped? Any sort of different mechanisms that exist that can be sort of tapped in this regard? How do we sort of address this challenge, especially when we talk about these mini and microgrids in the context of Balochistan? And feel free to jump onto any of the other points that you would like to generally highlight, or if any of the speakers have mentioned and you want to sort of respond. And just one thing before going to Chokas Saab has also sort of mentioned some of the studies that he did, and some of the ones that are present at the PPIB, also former AEDP. So if you can also sort of respond, I'll also be requesting RS and IDSP colleagues to respond to that later as well. So yes, over to you, Basit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ubaid. And just quickly on regard to the Shaukat Saabs, I think I am yet to see that study, Shaukat Saab, but if you can share with me, I would love to have a look at it. But at the same time, I have to mention there have been recently in past, I think probably 1 year or so, there have been many developments with regards to the overall electrification. We have seen an increased focus of there have been recently the World Bank study came out, and then there is a very detailed assessment that is being done by the World Bank itself about the specific district and locational areas for the microgrids and mini grids, which kind of shows how much viable they are, what are the locations that are suitable for those. So I think those are the things that we are looking into it very closely, and would love to see the previous works. And just building on that, there's a lot of need to kind of put all these things works together, because one thing that I've realized in working in Balochistan in past 2 years is there's a lot of stuff that has been done, but it's just not that much easily accessible, whether through digital media or whatsoever. So I think that's one place that we want to work. Now, coming over to your question, Obed, regarding the financing strategies, I think I'll try to address, first the core of it. I think Nafis Sab also mentioned, about 1.8 million, which is quite high for for a place like Balochistan and some other rural areas. So when you're talking about a high cost, first we have to decide that what exactly that we are talking about, right? It's not about replacing existing sources of energy. So we are talking about enhancing the electricity access, right? So the question here is not about just to shift to a new source of solar or wind, whether it's economically viable or not. It's about whether you put a mini grid there or you kind of connect it to the national grid. Now, when you're talking about connecting to the national grid, the cost of that is much higher. I mean, I don't have the numbers for it because there's no such feasibility done as of right now, but we do know that the cost is much higher because you don't have enough demand for the province. It's about I think 800 to 1 gigawatt to 2 gigawatt at max, the peak demand. And then you're talking about these long transmission line projects like HVDC, which requires much higher demand in order for them to be financially viable. So essentially, you are not left with much options. Either it's going to be about distributed source, or maybe some regions like on the western route may be connected to the Iran through a cross-border transmission line. But essentially, in the vast areas, in the mini grids, you only in the vast off-grid areas, you only have one option, right, to electrify them, and that's basically going towards some sort of decentralized arrangements to provide them access to electricity. So that's the first thing that we need to realize. Now, the second part that you talked about, financing avenues, let me put it into four major buckets, right, where financing can come in from. And of course, we're talking about innovative financing. So the role of each and every actor is equally important, and perhaps a more structured product, where all of these come into play, would be more useful. So first you have public sector funds, and then you have the private sector, and then you have development financial institutes, the MDBs, development partners, and also the international climate finance. And then the fourth one, you also have the community and the private sector itself. So when you're talking about public sector, I think we have to kind of view it in a little bit different way as well, because you're not talking about essentially any much of the new investment. You're also talking about easing out a lot of burden. So perhaps if you look into the budget of Balochistan, you'll see that you kind of give about 10 billion of subsidy annually to the different tube wells. And then when you're talking about the TDS, the tariff subsidy, that is much higher at that point. So you are talking about reducing those subsidies as well if you're looking into the microgrids and such kind of solutions as well. So how do you channelize that same subsidy into a more substantial, more reliable electricity? That's the key question when it comes to the public sector. And secondly, when we're talking about the private sector itself, I think uh, to mobilize the private sector, Said Saab mentioned about the PPP. That's one of the critical models that could be adopted. But you have to realize for PPP, it's a bit of a bigger ticket size projects that they usually look for. So maybe a more clustered approach where you have multiple projects. You can kind of cluster them into a one big security and then get it through the PPP mechanism. That could potentially be more suitable as well, because you see, it's, as you mentioned, it's a long duration due to which that long gestation period for the project to actually materialize when it comes to PPP. And we have seen some of the projects other than the infrastructure, straight on road and transport infrastructure, that have been very successful in PPP. Not the energy sector, but I think one case in point is basically the SEND educational EMOs. So that's an educational management operations. It's a school of sorts, which kind of is built in interiors and completely financed by the PPP. So such kind of models could be ideal to be launched in the Balochistan region. So you have to provide the right framework for it in order to them to be get adopted. And I think third, most importantly, one of the critical areas that have to be, because as Nafis Sab also mentioned, you have to fill in that financing gap. And unfortunately, our public sector doesn't have that kind of an appetite to completely fill it by themselves. Private sector, of course, if the business is not commercial, they cannot come in. And then again, at the same time, the community has so much that they can pay for, right? Specifically, we are talking about off-grid areas. So there's an angle of concessional finance, and for which the development partners, the MDBs, and also the international climate finance remains one of the key areas that could be tapped into it. And they have already made it way for the for the urban-based projects. If you look into the JS Bank facility that they have for providing partial guarantee to distributed solar energy systems, so such kind of facilities can also would be ideal based on the agenda of the GCF as well. So those kind of international climate finance opportunities can also be mobilized. And lastly, coming over to the community mobilization, and I think that we have had sufficient discussion about how can we mobilize with them and how they can be financed. It can be prepaid models or pay as you go as a service model, or community ownership as part of the equity or some other way. So that all could be part of it. One thing that needs to be provided, I think, it's not just about the finance, right? It's also about the not just about the you can say the quantum or the investment being mobilized. It's also about putting up the framework which allows that investments to be mobilized, right? So you're talking about how you can make banks lend to such kind of a project in Balochistan. So bank traditionally have been very risk averse in Pakistan. How do you allow them to kind of take that view? So the idea here is to, for the government, I think the most critical intervention at a provincial and a federal level that could be done is to kind of provide that framework that could support this additional, that would allow this private sector commercial banks to also take a view on such kind of projects. Now, this could be either something like an SBP facility that was already available for, I think, pass at a 6%, 7% RE financing scheme. So maybe some sort of that scheme could be materialized for the bank to kind of exposure. Then you have third-party guarantee facilities that are operating in Pakistan, like Infrazamin. Maybe they could help reduce the risk, allowing the bank to take some exposure. Or you can always have these international development partners, World Bank and ADB, to kind of take that lead, and commercial banks that allows the commercial banks to take the follow and take the route. So I think these are a few of the major strategies that could be deployed.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Wasif, for enlightening some very good initiatives for enlightening these funds for the whole financing aspect we're talking about. And we'll definitely make sure that these are also sort of all added into the some very key demands that I believe would also be very welcoming for the Balochistan Board of Investment and Trade as well. So with this, let me come to Amna. Amna, if you have any particular suggestions, and particularly now, let's sort of keep on discussing a bit of the way forward that we have, and actually how to again go about it as well. So after this, I'll be coming to Dr. Khalid, and then again to say Sarpana Saab. Over to you, Amna. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you first, and then I'd like to shed some light on, I hope I'm audible. I'd like to shed some light on Dr. Kuratulan's words she has been sharing here, that it will be a money-making model, like it will be a business. You will see that these microgrids will bring money. And as Nafisa said, that Balochistan has abundance of renewable energy resource. Now, how will this bring money? It's a question. If we, as we know that Balochistan is not having a robust transmission infrastructure right now. So like in TSEP, they have proposed that in 2028, there will be 28 sites that will be connected to Balochistan's main transmission system. And knowing that Balochistan covers 44% of the geographical location of Pakistan, having Quetta in the north and Gwadar in the south, we definitely need to employ or install HVDC transmission line there. This will help us, first of all, help us in energy trading or energy wheeling with our neighboring countries like Iran and Afghanistan. Secondly, we can sell this to our grid, our national grid, Thirdly, Balochistan is facing a lot of, like, the transmission system is facing a lot of power system stability, reliability. The grids are facing a lot of losses, and the reactive power compensation issues, the under voltage issues, the frequency issues, and the system harmonics are in such an imbalance that only 3 to 4 hours electricity is available for the remote or rural consumers. Having an agricultural load, it's very difficult for them to live or to continue an ordinary or simple livelihood there. So if we just just like Madam Kuratulan has been saying, that it will be bringing profit and money. This is a simple thing. If we start installing microgrids and being in islanding situation, if we connect them to the HVDC, they will bring more and more money, and they will attract more foreign investment as well. As the private grids or private microgrids or the investors can generate money with a separate or the personal billing mechanism, which is acceptable or which is permitted by NEPRA. So I think Balochistan has a very bright future, and there are a lot of studies and there are a lot of things that can be done, and there have been a lot of opportunities as well, but it's always neglected. So looking forward to
Yes, thank
hear
you.
more.
Thank you so much, Amna,
You're
for
welcome.
highlighting this perspective as well. I think this connectivity in addressing the grid issue, especially when we do talk about the whole interconnectedness between the two things, is extremely important. So last but not the least, let me come to Dr. Khalid, who's currently working as the research fellow at the Sustainable Development Policy Institute. Dr. Khalid, are you with us? Yeah, I think Dr. Khalid is just out of his seat. Let me just, we can perhaps take him for the end concluding remarks. So now coming back to our respected panel chair, Mr. Said Sarpara Sab, sir, you have been listening to discussion. I think a lot of suggestions have been given up regarding these different mechanisms to sort of channelize the financing towards these mini microgrids. A lot of community-based models have been highlighted by all of our esteemed experts. So in reference to discussion, I mean, we'll definitely be following up with you on with some solid actions coming from this webinar and some key policy recommendations coming in from this webinar in a documented form as well. But just listening to these speakers, what are some of your interventions, and perhaps if you'd like to sort of respond to any of the suggestions that have been made. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think we are focusing on the domestic utilization of this microgrids, but we can also link that with the business community. For instance, the mining sector is foremost important area, which is geographically located at the remote areas of Chakri. There are a number of small-scale miners who are in the business. The government of Balochistan is allocated lease or granted lease to 11 more projects like Rakodik. Each and every project has a potential and has energy requirements. So therefore, we can link these sort of things with the areas, remote areas where 5 megawatt, where 10 megawatt can boost the situation and can be easily manageable and can create synergies in that area. Secondly, I would like that there should be some bankable feasibilities. If conducted, the Board of Investment and Trade can easily manage investors for those, can create linkages to the microfinancing schemes, can create linkages to the international or national investors who are already in the business or who wants to connect. Thirdly, the special economic zones, the export processing zones. And there are many areas where we can collaborate with them and can meet their energy solutions. Because to run the economic cycle, to get that economic cycle triggered, it's very much important, because although the energy is need of every household as well, energy is needed for every person, and it's a basic need and requirement of every citizen, and it's the due right of the citizen to have that facility of electricity. But I think when we connect these to the business community, and that can generate employment, as well as that can be beneficial for that community even. And lastly, I would recommend that such type of bankable feasibilities can be shared with the government of Balochistan, where while putting a lot of money on the solarization, on the electrification, in the PSDP schemes, they can also go to the allocate amount for the same for the PPP framework as well. So the existing budget can be diverted, and that budget can be utilized in a very efficient manner that can be more beneficial for our communities. Last but not the least, the World Bank projects like BLUF, Balochistan Livelihood Entrepreneur Programs. These type of programs are providing matching grants to the households, to the individuals, to the business entrepreneurs. And that matching grant can be a very great match in this scenario. If suppose there's a community, there's a village, there's a special economic zone, there's an entity. For instance, recently we have received the ADM Group of China, who wants to establish a electric vehicle manufacturing plant, car manufacturing plant at Quetta in Balochistan, and they are going to offer 1,500 electric charging stations throughout the country, as well as in the various areas of Balochistan. And that is a very economic model. And if from a very small intervention, we can ask number of people to engage in this business. For instance, there is an area, suppose in my village, I can offer them a free land to just establish an electric charging station. And they have offered to that establish electric charging station on their cost. That is not receivable back to them. There's their grant, and you have the ownership of that. But where is the missing link? That we don't have energy in those areas. So for instance, such type of clusters, if we can make, and we can connect the dots in the national landscape canvas, I think we can get synergies out of it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for these extremely useful interventions and these recommendations that you have highlighted. All very well received. So now, before going to conclusion, let me come back to Shaukat Saab if he has any key policy recommendations or concrete action or any other further action points that he would like to sort of highlight at this platform before we pitch anything as a way forward from this platform to different stakeholders. Yes, yes, over to you, Shaukat.
Okay, Obed, thank you very much once again, and thank you everyone for a very elaborative, informative session on microgrids and rural electrification. I mean, when it comes to recommendations for Balochistan, so I think the first and most important thing comes to my mind is basically the policy framework. We know that there are some policy documents at the federal level, the renewable energy policy, and there is also a renewable rural electrification strategy of the government, although it's not approved yet, but there is a document available. But at the provincial level, I'm not sure if there is any policy document, to support renewable energy, this decentralized power generation, rural electrification, access to energy to off-grid and V-grid areas of Balochistan. So if there is not that document already with the provincial government, I mean, there has to be some policy document. Of course, everything is owned by the government of Pakistan, and this is their responsibility even to provide access to energy to rural population. But if there are other people supporting the government of Pakistan, so at least the government of Pakistan should have a policy framework or a document to support private investors and other activists coming to Balochistan to invest and practice renewable energy intervention. So this is one thing, policy document. The second thing I was thinking of during the presentation and later during the discussion is basically, since I work with so many donor organizations, and when it comes to Balochistan, the donors become a bit reluctant to go to Balochistan. So I think the donors don't see a viable, working environment in Balochistan. One reason could be the line order situation. And the second thing is basically the remote locations of the project sites. The third one would be the capacity, lack of capacity within the institutions and within the communities. So, I mean, I would request the government of Balochistan to somehow establish a coordination platform in Balochistan, like there are some coordination, donor coordination platforms already established in Gilgit-Baltistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. At the federal level, I was representing KFW at some point in time. So there are donor coordination platforms available, but there is no donor coordination platform in Balochistan as far as I know. So the government of Balochistan should interact with the international donor agency. There are funding coming in, especially in the energy and environment sectors right now. But I mean, it doesn't go to Balochistan. So this is the second recommendation for the government of Balochistan. The third one would be basically to ensure institutional capacity buildings and awareness among the communities. Because if we have to work with the communities, if we expect the communities to run these microgrid projects, then of course we have to build their capacities.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Shaukat Saab. Especially the point around having a coordination platform for Balochistan is something that is really important. I think if, again, IDSP is here in versus there, we do have BBOIT with us, so perhaps if this can be taken forward, we'll definitely have a dedicated discussion around this. So we're coming very quickly to Basit and then Rafiq Saab. If we just in a minute time, you can sort of let us know if you have any further concrete actions or recommendations to take pitch from this platform, and then we'll go to Dr. Kuratulan for her final concluding remarks in the vote of thanks. So yeah, Basit, if you can go first, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think Shaukat Saab has mentioned like quite useful recommendations. So just quickly on the policy front, the government of Balochistan is working. I mean, IDSP is supporting them and advocating for a provincial-led policy as well, and which shall include, the soft grid component as well. I think on that aspect, one of the key things that needs to happen is there needs to be some kind of initial targets and objectives in place and direction from the government that this is what they intend to do. Right, so we can see one or two projects may coming up online, but we can never see a scale up of those projects unless there is a right policy or a framework there, or in perhaps a target there by the government level that needs to be achieved in order for such projects to be scaled up. So that's the first thing. And one thing that I wanted to mention, I think, which we have missed kind of going through over the challenges, is also when you're talking about microgrids, you're talking about proper quality based products, right? You're not talking about the existing solar panels and the tier 2 and 3 panels which are currently being utilized in most of these off-grid areas where they have, right? So they have these panels that have the life of about 3 to 4 years. So I think another critical area we need to keep in mind while we are building this project is about how to have those kind of negotiations, because you're talking about additional price point for a tier 1 panel, but the most of the population within these rural areas is kind of get very used to about tier 3 panels, which are very cheap and available for the market, that kind of fills their needs for the SHS. So how do we tackle that? I think that's also a question that probably we need to look into next. And lastly, I think perhaps along the recommendation side, as Saeed Saab mentioned, a clustered approach, you can kind of integrate whether EV charging stations with the solar microgrids, or maybe integrate solar microgrids among each other, have a clustered approach, or maybe some other kind of business model where we have productive use of energy with them, or integrate with some mining operations. So that is all something that could potentially be formulated into a structured project. But for that, we have to decide whether we want to have a single one-by-one projects like to the PSDP funds, or we want to use that capital that we have to mobilize additional capital from the multilateral sources or the private sector and the communities to kind of have a wider impact and install a much greater level of megawatts. So that's
Yeah,
what
thank you. Thank you so much, Bhaskar. Just before going to Dr. Kurat for her final concluding, let me invite Mr. Nafis Saab from Papak if he has any last point or recommendations to make just in a minute time, Nafis Saab. I'm so sorry for the time. We're just going above the time. Yes.
Thank you, Ubaid, once again. And as most of our colleagues already highlighted certain policy and financial issues, I think clear-cut policy with regulatory framework from the government side, and then obviously access to finance. Because let me quote you an example. There is appetite. We had developed a proposal for one of the tourist hotspot in Hunza, where there were more than 1,000, hotels and restaurants, and they are generating electricity from diesels that's costing them over, I think, 60, 70 rupees per kilowatt. And we offered them, that we can provide them with, let's say, the same clean energy that can replace diesel gensets with, I think, per unit cost of around 30 rupees. And they are very glad, and even they are ready to be partner of that project. So that's kind of appetite there. We have to provide them a viable business model. So all sort of appetite is there. There could be financing available. Even people in areas where they have good affordability, they are, disconnecting them from the grid because they're long blackouts and load shedding, So they are opting for renewable energy, and there are different renewable energy delivery models like Basit pointed out, pay as you go, rent to own, So you name it, and they have it. So all we need to have is a clear and business enabling environment policy from government of Pakistan, and then support from the commercial banks offering concessional loans. And again, we have technology and we have business models available.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Nafis Saab, and all of our distinguished experts for wonderful interventions. And we'll make sure that IDSP and SDPL sort of combines to turn them into a two-page document that can actually be shared with all the relevant stakeholders. But we'll definitely keep the discussion going, especially some of the very key action points that have been marked coming out from all of our distinguished panelists today. So with this, let me come back to Dr. Kurat from IDSP. So, ma'am, we have been discussing with the issue, and I think it was very good to see all of our experts highlighting how the community again needs to be at the center, and how eventually the things have to be revolved. But we also need to also look at the solutions from a technical perspective, from a financial perspective, how to sort of channelize these necessary technical and financial keys to these for these, especially for the development of these microgrids. So again, coming back to you for your final concluding and your interventions, if you have any key takeaways, and yeah, thank you so much. So over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Ubaid. Thank you so much for such a vibrant panel, and I was really very impressed and very hopeful now, because every day we are like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward here in Balochistan. But the level and quality of the recommendations that have been generated is just very meaningful. And I would really request this panel and SPDI and whoever is taking the lead role with IDSP, or even if without IDSP, I don't mind. But this is fantastic what I have just, in webinar I have seen. I must really congratulate and appreciate deeply Shaukat Sahab, Ubaid, yourself, Saeed Sahab, and our Basit Sahab, Nafis Sahab. I think you people all covered all aspects, from policy to political will, to application, to strategy, and to the financial viability and sustainability. I wonder who is going to document all this, what has come out, because this is a great paper in itself, and it will give a way forward to the government of Balochistan, to government of Pakistan, and to the any stakeholder interested group who want to be part of it. But these recommendations should not be lost. I would request that a draft should come out and again circulated in this group, and finalize it. And I think this should become the core of a working paper for the next phase. That is what I think is a outcome, conclusion of today's some excellent discourse.
Yes.
My deepest thanks, and I'm sorry I was out for a little while because our team from the flood-affected areas of rural Balochistan was here, and we have to start. We are planning with them for some relief or whatever situations are there. So I just had to go out for a little while.
So
thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kurat. Dr. Kurat will definitely very quickly convert this into sort of these initially perhaps very quick recommendation that containing key action points that can be forwarded to the relevant stakeholders, and perhaps will definitely later on in collaboration with IDSP sort of convert into working paper, but more from the engagement point of view, and what different ministries think, perhaps sort of coming up with some regulatory sandboxes following this, like what are where we do have some consensus with the government, especially some of the very key points that are raised by Shaukat Saab, Basit, as well as
absolutely. Shaukat Saab is very precise and very strategic points at policy level, at all levels. I think that Shaukat Saab's insights can be the basis of the working paper. Yeah.
Definitely. So once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It has been a wonderful discussion. But just like I think also Dr. Kurat mentioned in the last, that the true essence and the true impact would actually lie how effectively these voices are heard at the levels, at the forums they really sort of matter. And once again, thank you so much for these wonderful interventions. And we'll meet. Yes, Dr. Kurat, you wanted to sort of mention something, perhaps? Awais, if you can unmute. It is mute. It is on mute.
Can you hear me?
It is. Yes, we can hear you now.
I just want to say one thing, that the way Balochistan is projected as a very dangerous place, believe me, it is as dangerous as any part of Pakistan. You can't walk on Karachi's streets without being mugged, without having something will happen to you. It's so dangerous. Danger is everywhere, but sometimes it is really elaborated so much. I live here. We work with the women. We are traveling all the time, all over Balochistan on public transport. We stay in the houses of the people across Pakistan, and we don't find any vibes of कि हम खतरे में कुछ हो जाएगा. ऐसा नहीं है. हाँ, ये जरूर होता है कि when you enter a community of disturbed people with huge vehicles, with शान और शौकत के साथ, और with loads of power कि हम ये करने आए हैं और वो करने आए हैं, तो vibes जरा different चली जाती हैं vested group को, वो भी vested interest group को, not the ordinary people. So there's a way of working, there's a way of relating according to the prevailing situation. And these situations are everywhere in Pakistan, and we work accordingly. We study it and we go through it. So that is what we should be doing for Balochistan as well. Instead of making it untouchable, something untouchable.
Yes,
this
definitely.
This will not help. This is going to aggravate more. This is not going to help. Believe me.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much. We fully understand the point. And once again, thank you so much to all the speakers for joining us today. It has been a wonderful discussion. We'll make sure we sort of follow up very quickly on all of the very useful interventions and recommendations that have sort of came out of today's discussion. So with this, thank you so much again, and we'll be concluding the session. Our apologies, we have extended 13 minutes over the time, but I fully understand that was completely worth all the important discussion that we had. So once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Thank you. She wants to say something.
Okay, yes, please.
I wonder when we will get webinars where we can share a cup of tea too.
Yes,
I really feel this kind of meeting doesn't really. Chai nahi pilai, kuch.
We leave it to Obed. We leave it to Obed. He can arrange.
Definitely. So once again, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Love this.